Hi, I'm Erica from FiveLittleMonsters.com. Welcome to week 2 of Summer Camp Craft Saturdays with Five Little Monsters. For those of you who didn't see last week's video or blog post, this summer I thought it'd be a fun thing to do a little summer camp craft, something quick and easy, inexpensive project that just doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of materials or experience or skill level. Each Saturday this summer through July and August. So last week was the first week and we made friendship bracelets. And this week, we're going to be painting some rocks. When I started thinking about summer camp crafts that I could do, one of the first things that came to mind was painted rocks. And I kind of felt a little bit silly even doing a video and a post about it because it's just painting rocks. But I thought I would share a few ideas and things that I've found to make it easier and go more smoothly. One of the things that's fun about painting rocks is you can do it with adults or even kids. Like there's some of these that my kids painted and they had a really fun time with it too. So it's fun for people of all ages to do. And another thing that's really nice about painting rocks is it doesn't take a lot of supplies. But that's the first thing we're going to talk about is what you need to get started. And first, obviously, you're going to need rocks. So let's talk rocks. So what are you looking for in a rock? You want something, size and shape and stuff kind of depends on what you want. I like to go for rocks that are probably somewhere in the range of about 2 to 4 inches in length. I don't like to go too big, but that's totally a personal preference and up to you. You want rocks that are going to be fairly smooth and even have kind of like a surface that makes it easy to paint on. But you can do all shapes and all sizes. The biggest thing is probably going to be the smoothness. You don't want like a really rough or broken rock. You want something that's going to be fairly smooth. The easiest place to find them is obviously just going outside and finding them. A lot of these just came from my yard. I have a part of my yard that has a bunch of rocks in it, like just a spot that's dirt and rocks. And so we can dig through there and usually find some pretty decent rocks. But if you don't have access to rocks just outside, you can go to a landscaping store or a home improvement store and you can buy bags of rocks. That's where some of these ones came from. I don't particularly love these ones. They're a little bit more porous than I would have liked, but they work. And the rocks that you can get those places are typically fairly inexpensive. I think I bought a pretty giant bag for less than $10. I want to say it was maybe $5 or $6 that I paid for a big giant bag of rocks that had a ton of rocks in it. So that's a fairly inexpensive route to go. Another option is when I made these Easter egg painted rocks for a blog post around Easter time. I needed some rocks and I wanted some that were smooth and were going to be good for painting, and I just ordered them online. I got them on Amazon. They were a lot pricier for what you get. It was a fairly small bag of rocks and it was definitely a lot more expensive to go that route. I can't remember how much I paid. I think it was maybe around $15, but they were really nice, smooth rocks that were nice to paint. And they were kind of the flat. You can see it's fairly flat, round, smooth. So these were great rocks for painting, but it was definitely a pricier route to go. But that is also an option. Wherever you get your rocks, you're going to want to make sure that before you start painting that you wash them off really well, get all the dirt off, and just make sure that they're really nice and clean before you get started. Once you have your rocks picked out and cleaned and ready to paint, the next thing is going to be to figure out what you want to use to paint your rocks. One option is using acrylic craft paint and paintbrushes. And that is probably my favorite option because I have a lot of paint and I feel like a lot of people have craft paint laying around from different projects. So it's easy to find like a variety. They're typically pretty inexpensive to get. You can get a huge variety of colors. So this is just a really great option. And obviously with that, you would also need paintbrushes. Another option is doing paint pens. And these are just some that I got on Amazon. And they have paint in them. This is what I used for the Easter egg rocks that I used. And they go on really smoothly and they're a little bit easier, I think, to use like especially I feel like with kids, they're really easy because they can control the paint a lot more. And so they're a little bit less messy. They are a little bit more expensive though. And when you get a box, I got a pretty big box with 24 colors, but a lot of them come in smaller packages. And so you may be stuck with a much more limited palette of colors, depending on what you buy. And another option is you can also use Sharpie markers or other permanent markers to write or draw on your rocks. Or you can use a combination of these. So this is an example of the paint pens, like I said, and this one's a little bit older, so it's gotten kind of a little bit roughed up, but this one was done with all acrylic paints. Or you have something like this that was done with a combination of acrylic paints, which is the blue, and then metallic Sharpie markers, which is the gold and the silver. So you can combine them as well. So I thought I would show some examples of some of the different paint options, as well as some different techniques you can use with these different options. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show acrylic paint. We're just going to put a little bit on my palette that's just a plate. And I'm going to get a brush and I'm going to take one of these rocks. And I was thinking, just for the sake of making everything kind of the same, just going to paint a little heart on each rock. So this is just acrylic paint on the rock, just in the shape that I am making on my rock. So I've got just a little heart. Another option with the acrylic paint is you can do, so that would be similar to this, where I just painted on the sun, but the rock is just behind it. Another option is you can paint the entire rock a base color, and then you can paint your design on top of that. So maybe we'll do that with this one. At least on the top part, just for the sake of the video, I probably won't paint the entire thing, but just to kind of show some more options and ways that you can do it. This will probably need a couple of coats of paint to really be nice and smooth and look good, but it'll give you the idea. So we'll let that dry and then maybe put on another coat before we move on to our next part. Okay, then for the next one, we're going to show the paint marker. So with these, you shake them several times, it says, and then you press it down. And these have been used, so it may not be as big of a deal, but you press it down until the paint starts flowing. And usually it'll start up in a second. And you'll be able to kind of see a dot of paint on your... I usually just keep a scrap of paper next to me when I'm using the paint pens. Oh, it's coming now. So you can start seeing that paint coming. And so now, once you get your paint flowing pretty good, you can take your rock and you can just draw your design on your rock. And you can see it's much more controlled, and I have a lot more ability to focus on like where exactly I want those lines to be. It's much more like drawing with a marker, but it's paint. And that's why I really like this option for, I painted with a group of young girls one time. We did rocks, and it was really nice to have these because they just had a lot more control. You didn't have messy blotches of paint and paintbrushes, and so this is a really nice option for that. And you can then like go over it with other colors once it's dry. That on this one I kind of did that, like with the blue dots on the yellow, that was over the top. Others I just only colored a section and then I colored the next section. But you can see you can go over it with other colors just like you could with paint. And then for our last option, we're going to do the Sharpie. And so for this, you can just draw. This is my least favorite option straight on the rock, because I feel like you're just coloring over it, but you can still see like the rock underneath. It doesn't make it as, it's a little bit more transparent than the other options. It's less like paint and more just looks like you drew on it with a Sharpie, since that's what you did. But what I do like to do with the Sharpies, and the way that I like to use them when it comes to rock painting, is I like to combine Sharpies and paint. And specifically, I really like to do that with the metallic Sharpies. So what I kind of like to do is similar to it like I did on this one, where you can kind of just paint, and this you could do again, another option. So you could just paint just your design on the rock like we did with this heart. You could paint a base coat over the entire rock like we did with this, or you can kind of just paint like a, I don't know, a section, a shape that you're gonna then paint on. This is not the best brush to do this with, but you can kind of just paint like an oval or a shape on the top of your rock that you're going to then fill in with, or that you're going to then put your design on. Okay, so you can kind of make the shape that you want your, I don't know, the kind of the canvas that you're then going to paint on. And you just make that whatever shape you want. And let that dry, and then we can write with Sharpie. And like I said, the metallic Sharpies work really well on that, and then that's a cool way to do it as well. So once your paint has dried, now you can come with the Sharpie and you can draw on top of that painted area. And that is a way that you can combine the Sharpie with the paint. And I think that that's probably my favorite way to do it. And like I did on this one, you can draw like a border around with a Sharpie. I just went around the edge and like outlined it, and then I just drew a little border. You can add elements with the Sharpie markers on top of the paint. You could do other little smaller hearts, or whatever you wanted to. So it's kind of a fun way to add like a finishing touch, and especially if you use the metallic ones, because they're just really nice and shiny and fun. And now I think this rock, I put a second coat on it, and I think it's dry now and ready to move on to the next step. So for this, something similar to this, you can paint the base coat, paint your entire rock, and I would paint the bottom too, but just for the sake of doing a video quick, I didn't on this one. But then you can just paint over it with the next color that you want to use, and you can make this. I need a smaller brush. You can paint your little design on there. And so you can definitely layer and do different colors and different things. So those are just a few of the things that I have found that work well with painting rocks. You can paint with acrylic paint directly on just the design that you want on the rock. You can do a base coat and then layer the acrylic paints. You can do just like make yourself a little painted canvas on the top of the rock that covers the area that you want. Similar to that one. or these are the base coats, or the designs just directly onto the rock. You can use Sharpie markers. You can give kids a Sharpie marker and let them just draw. Or you can use acrylic paint pens. So there you go. Painting rocks is a fun activity for adults. I painted some of these. For teenagers, my daughter painted some of these. Or for little kids. So craft that's fun for all ages. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week with another summer camp craft.